Welcome back to Timeless Messages from the I Ching. This is Stephen. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you're doing well. So this particular video is a case study, a personal study, in which I am asking about the possibility of dating someone, a woman that I had known some years before, and wanted to get some guidance on whether or not to move forward or hold back from interacting with this person, with this woman. And I think this could be very telling because this is actually a two video segment, video number 77, and then the next video, number 78, showcases two different examples of hexagrams that describe the situation. And they're quite enlightening, quite interesting, and I think that you would find a lot of benefit from listening to these readings as they may be applicable for you and your own relationships. So, the question that I asked the I Ching is, would dating this person be for her and my greatest good? Would dating this person be for her and my greatest good? And the hexagrams that came up were number 45, gathering together, and number 64, before completion, with a number of changes in the first hexagram, number 45. So without further ado, I'm going to begin the interpretation. If you'd like to relax your eyes and take some deep breaths and have some stress reduction, that would be fantastic. Whatever you happen to be doing, I hope that you're able to enjoy the process. Gathering together. So this hexagram, there's a lot of description in the very beginning, and I think I'm just going to pass over some of this. I'm going to go right to the judgment. Gathering together, success. The king approaches his temple. It furthers one to see the great man. This brings success. Perseverance furthers. To bring great offerings creates good fortune. It furthers one to undertake something. So this talks about the gathering together of people in large communities in either a natural occurrence, a family, or in the case of like the city that you live in, the state, and so forth. And it talks about the importance of spiritual forces being a help in these types of gatherings so that people don't go crazy and treat each other improperly. It talks about collective moral force helping to unite the world, and this type of unification can leave great achievements behind, can accomplish great achievements, and talks about there being a need for a human leader in a group to serve as the center of the group. In order to bring others together, this leader must first of all be collected within himself or herself. So the importance of there being a leader, and this leader essentially having their self collected, meaning being in a good place, being balanced and stable, and so forth. Moving on to the image, over the earth, the lake, the image of gathering together. Thus, a superior person renews their weapons in order to meet the unforeseen. So this talks about water in a lake that gathers until it rises above the earth and causes flooding. So precautions have to be taken to prevent this. And similarly, it talks about when there are people in large numbers, strife is likely to occur. And we have to prevent possible problems in advance to ward off the unexpected. For it states that human suffering is oftentimes the result of unexpected events for which we are not prepared. And if we are prepared, these types of unexpected events, which can be harmful or not positive, can be prevented. So essentially, the beginning of this hexagram's description really talks about, are you able to serve as a leader? Are you collected within yourself? Are you prepared to prevent off possible difficulties and strife at the beginning, something that you may not even be prepared for or aware of? Are you able to take precautions to prevent difficulties? It's the lines that seem to be most interesting, though. The 6 in the second place in the lower trigram, the X, the yin line that changes to yang. Letting oneself be drawn brings good fortune and remains blameless. If one is sincere, it furthers one to bring even a small offering. In the time of gathering together, we should make no arbitrary choice of the way. Arbitrary would be like a random, whimsical choice that's not based on reason. Or it could be an unrestrained choice, kind of like, okay, whatever, I'll just try this. There are secret forces at work, leading together those who belong together. What an interesting statement. There are secret forces at work, leading together those who belong together. And we must yield to this attraction. Then we make no mistakes. Where inner relationships exist, no great preparations and formalities are necessary. People understand one another immediately, just as the divinity graciously accepts a small offering if it comes from the heart. When I read this, I was shocked because obviously it's saying don't make a whimsical or unreasonable choice. Don't make an arbitrary choice to move forward. The idea of secret forces being at work, leading together those who belong together, and if we yield to this attraction, we make no mistakes, because there had been a strong magnetic connection between the two of us, this woman and me, and this really chimed in on that. I thought, well, this is very positive. And it also uses another interesting term where inner relationships exist. So this would seem to indicate there already is some sort of inner bond or inner relationship between this person and me, so that no great preparations or no formalities are needed. And people who have these inner relationships understand one another immediately. So everything in that paragraph and the second changing line really resonated with me based on the magnetic attraction that she and I had had some years previously. Now, this is not someone that I had dated. This is just a person that I'd had a number of interactions with, very positive interactions and conversations. The next changing line is the 9 in the 5th place, and that means if in gathering together one has position, this brings no blame. If there are some who are not yet sincerely in the work, sublime and enduring perseverance is needed, then remorse disappears. So this talks about the idea of beautiful and enduring perseverance are needed. And the idea of having a particular position. If in gathering together one has position, this brings no blame. Talking about a particular position or situation that one must find oneself in to probably have some form of positive influence. And also the idea of having perseverance. So the text begins, when people spontaneously gather around a man, it is only a good. It gives this man a certain influence that can be altogether useful. But of course, there is also the possibility that many people may gather around this man not because of a feeling of confidence, but merely because of this man's influential position. This is certainly to be regretted. The only means of dealing with such people is to gain their confidence through steadfastness and intensified and unswerving devotion to duty. And in this way, secret mistrust will gradually be overcome, and there will be no occasion for regret. So this this description indicates the idea that there could be a lack of confidence, and I think the reason I'm actually doing the reading on my own part is because there is a sense of doubt or a lack of confidence in whether or not I should move forward. And I would imagine the same thing could be present if this woman were to be asked as well, that she would probably have some doubt or some reservations in whether or not to move forward with a type of interaction. So This lack of confidence that both she and I likely feel, or you could even call it a sense of mistrust or doubt, can be overcome and confidence can be renewed if the two of us can prove to one another that we are consistent, steadfast, and devoted to duty, essentially showing the goodness of our character, that we're not all over the place, that the possibility of interacting with one another because of how we conduct ourselves in our devotion to duty and being consistent in our character will help to strengthen the confidence and reduce the mistrust and doubt. So this is very good counsel in terms of how to proceed, because these are realistic concerns that I have had, and I would imagine that she too has had these as well. The final changing line, 6 at the top, means lamenting and sighing, floods of tears, no blame. Now this doesn't sound very good, but I'll read the description and I think you'll find it's very nice. It may happen that an individual would like to ally himself or herself with another person, but their good intentions are misunderstood. Then this person becomes sad and laments. But this is the right course, for it may cause the other person to come to their senses, so that the alliance that has been sought and so painfully missed is after all achieved. So this talks about the idea of desiring to connect with another person, but the one person's good intentions are misunderstood by the other person. And so the person who would like to connect with this other person becomes sad and laments. But this is actually a good thing, because over time it can cause the other person to come to their senses, so that an alliance that has been sought and so painfully missed is after all achieved. And in my considerations of this other person, I had definitely thought there was a connection there, a magnetic, strong connection, a lot of care and concern, interest, sexual attraction, a lot of interest in terms of gentleness, tenderness, affections. And so I thought there was probably something very good there that we just missed out on. Another interpretation of this particular idea is that I could reach out to this woman. My intentions are good, but they're misunderstood by her. And then I become sad because she doesn't seem to be that interested. But this actually leads to the other person coming to their senses, this woman, and the alliance that has been sought and so painfully missed is after all achieved. So in our interactions with each other, text messages and conversations, we had always expressed a lot of affinity and strong emotion for one another. Even though we didn't have a lot of history with each other, there was an undeniable magnetic connection there. We fell out of contact with each other. I sort of deliberately stopped interacting with this person, not in a negative way whatsoever, but she had made mention of me working on some aspects of myself, which were valid points, but it felt as though I was being analyzed. She's a counselor. And so I felt like I didn't really want to be in that type of a dynamic with someone whereby this could be a repetitive pattern of this person seeking to help me transform over and over and over again. It's always nice to transform, but it's also very nice to be accepted as you are. That's a wonderful experience as well. And so because of that interaction, I essentially announced to her that, well, hey, if you change your mind, I will definitely work on myself, but if you change your mind and you'd like to interact, get in touch with me. But I think that at this point, I'll probably just, go about my life and let you go about yours. And so then a year or so later, I got into a relationship with another woman and spent 2.5 years with her, grew a lot of transition in that relationship. It was very intense and produced a lot of growth, which I'm thankful for, but obviously could not be sustained. But at some point during that interaction with this second woman in that relationship, the first woman that I'm asking the questions about in terms of the I Ching had contacted me and wanted to have some form of interaction at some friend's place, and not a sexual interaction, just conversation and so forth. And this, of course, was not going to fly because I was in a relationship, and so I pointed this out to this woman that, yeah, this isn't going to work. I'm in a relationship, and no, this wouldn't be respectful for my girlfriend. So, and she understood. And so then there was radio silence, essentially. And then after the breakup of the 2.5-year relationship with the other woman, not immediately, but sometime after that, a few months after that, I began to seriously wonder if reaching out to this previous woman could be a good idea, hence the reading. And I think that this final paragraph that I'm referring to, 6 at the top, it really strikes a resonant chord in me, because I think subconsciously I had always felt a certain regret or pain, like I'd missed out on something by she and I not being able to at least try to get to know each other a little bit more, have more interactions, and see if there's a peace and harmony between us and so forth. In addition to the feeling of magnetism and attraction, which was great, but hopefully there's some peace and harmony too. And I think that this paragraph really resonated for me, because I had always been seeking this type of alliance, as the paragraph states, and I think I'd definitely painfully missed that type of alliance in my life. And so when it says that after all this alliance will be achieved, alliance that has been sought and so painfully missed is after all achieved, I thought, well, this could actually come back toward a really good place. And it led me to a hopeful state of mind. So the ideas that came through the reading led me to the conclusion that this could very well be a very positive and good idea for me to reach out to this woman and reconnect. Now, the second hexagram, number 64, let's describe what's going on there. Before completion. This hexagram indicates a time when the transition from disorder to order is yet to be completed. The change is indeed prepared for, since all the lines in the upper trigram are in relation to those in the lower. However, they are not yet in their proper places. So this talks about the preceding hexagram, which is after completion. So after completion is first, and then before completion follows that, the last hexagram of the I Ching. So after completion is the preceding hexagram, and it offers an analogy to autumn, which forms the transition from summer to winter. But in this hexagram of before completion, this presents a parallel to spring, which leads out of winter's stagnation into the fruitful time of summer. And so, of course, I'm thinking about the reconnection with this particular woman at the end of winter, or not exactly the end, but spring is not too far down the road. And so that chimes in for me in terms of, okay, well, the spring might be an opportunity to reach out to this person. The judgment before completion, success. But if the little fox, after nearly completing the crossing, gets his tail in the water, there is nothing that would further. The conditions are difficult, the task is great, and full of responsibility. It is nothing less than that of leading the world out of confusion back to order. but it is a task that promises success. So this is a hopeful idea. The conditions are difficult. It's a the task is great and full of responsibility, leading out of confusion back to order. I can relate to that. Okay, that's fine. There is a goal. It's a task that promises success because there's a goal that can unite the forces that tend in different directions. So this seems to paint a very hopeful picture of, maybe you could bring order out of confusion. At first, however, a person must move very cautiously, like an old fox walking over the ice. The caution of a fox walking over ice is a proverbial painting or idea in Chinese thought. The fox's ears are constantly alert to the cracking of the ice as the fox carefully and circumspectly searches out the safest spots. Whereas a young fox who as yet has not acquired this caution goes ahead boldly, and it may happen that the fox falls in the water and gets their tail wet when they're almost across the water. Then, of course, their effort has been in vain. So accordingly, in times before completion, it talks about before completion, this particular hexagram requires deliberation and caution are the prerequisites of success. So this is good guidance about having deliberation, thoughtfulness, not moving forward in a whimsical or random way, having caution, and being like the fox that is careful to walk across the ice and only choose the safest spots to cross, and not be like the young fox who just simply goes ahead boldly. So these are all wonderful ideas in kind of the other side of the coin in terms of whether or not this would be for her and my greatest good for us to date each other. The image, fire over water. So the upper trigram is the clinging fire and the lower trigram is the abysmal water. The image of the condition before transition. Thus a superior person is careful in the differentiation of things so that each finds its place. When fire, which by nature flames upward, is above, and water, which flows downward, is below, their effects and movements take opposite directions and remain unrelated. If we wish to achieve an effect, we must first investigate the nature of the forces in question and understand their proper places. If we can bring these forces to bear in the right places, they will have the desired effects and completion will be achieved. But in order to handle external forces properly, we must above all arrive at the correct standpoint ourselves, for only from this perspective can we work correctly. So this paints a picture of the elements being out of harmony, you could say. Not necessarily out of harmony, but each in their own way is flowing in different directions. So their effects move away from one another. So the idea of bringing order out of this type of chaos, not really chaos, but it's a movement that's moving away from each other, bringing that back to a position that can actually be fruitful so that the movements are in harmony. The opposite hexagram would be after completion, in which the fire is now the lower trigram and the water is the upper trigram. And this talks about, putting a pot of water on top of a fire, and they work very well together. So it points to the idea of what needs to be done within oneself before plunging ahead or moving ahead. What type of deliberation and caution are required? How can you be careful in what you're doing so that the effects that you wish to produce are positive? As you investigate the situation more through contemplation, looking within, are you able to bring these forces of fire and water to bear in the right positions and have the more positive desired effects? If you can, then completion will be achieved. But it talks about the need to handle external forces properly, such as interactions with another human being. The only way to do so is to arrive at the correct standpoint ourselves, because this is the perspective from which we can work correctly. So it throws me back upon myself and essentially is asking, well, where are you at in your own process? How are you able to move across the ice, across a dangerous conditions being difficult? How are you able to lead the world out of confusion back to order and so forth? Are you up to the task? It promises success because there's a goal that can unite these two forces, fire and water, that are currently moving in different directions. But you have to be like the old fox that walks across the ice very, very carefully and cautiously and chooses the safest spots. So this gives pause for reflection. And I think it's helpful and it's complementary to have this as the second hexagram, because the first hexagram of gathering together certainly painted a picture for me of, wow, this does seem like the right thing, and these energies that are essentially good for each other will be magnetically drawn together without doubt, and these secret forces that are behind the scenes that are making this happen are at work. So this second hexagram for me helped to balance things out with the positivity of the first hexagram. Even so, the next day after casting this particular reading, I still had doubts and I had reservations and a lack of confidence in terms of whether or not to reach out to this person. And so in the next video, number 78, I describe the second reading that's related to this particular topic. And I think it's very interesting. And if you'd like to tune in, I'll see you there. Thanks for listening, and take care.